Last night we touched the skies, a blend of mushrooms, I could feel it in my head. Ribs I had seen, we've been laughing all night. Drank till the last glass we could barely see. Red was so brighter to see. The darkness is falling all over my face. Memories fading away like angry birds. Reaching for a place where my voice would ever reach. Can you hear my crying heart? Reaching for the stars above the skies. My voice will never sound like it used to do. 'Cause I can only cry for her one more night. For her one more night, yeah. For her one more night, yeah. Or I can only cry for her. At the hub we spoke about our future and the dreams to come. Plenty kisses we could miss a count. We are like best friends, even God can deny that. We are a match by him on a weekend when he was in the mood of making diamonds and many things that I like. And then to the angels who were singing that time, can you hear my crying eyes? Reaching for those stars above the skies. My voice never sound like it used to do. 'Cause I can only cry for her. Can you hear my crying eyes? Reaching for the stars above the skies. My voice will never sound like it used to do. 'Cause I can only cry for one more night. Oh, for one more night, yeah. Oh, for one more night, yeah. Or I can only cry for her one more night. Oh, one more night, yeah. One more night. I can only cry for her one more night. Or I can only cry for her one more night.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I guess we're live. My name is Janet Sawari, and I'm the host of today's session. And I'm so happy to be part of this unique event in partnership with HYBR. I think it's all about celebrating women, empowerment, resilience, and future proofing women for change. So I hope our audience is excited. I hope you're ready to listen in on some of the deep conversations we're going to have. Joining us today is going to be a powerhouse, definitely one of my favorite people in the world. I met her last year serendipitously at an event, and her name is Rebecca Enonchong. She's the founder and CEO of Apps Tech, an enterprise software company. She's a global executive board member of the International Chamber of Commerce. She plays a vital role in promoting technology innovation and ventures in Africa. So, ladies, if you need some VC funds or advice, definitely follow Rebecca. You know, she chairs Cameroon's ActivSpaces and is a trustee and chair of the Emeritus of Afrilabs, supporting over 1 million entrepreneurs across 52 African countries. Good Lord, Rebecca's achievements and accolades are a lot, and it's a mouthful. But you know, Rebecca also founded Cameroon Angels Network and African Business Angels Network. She's the vice chair of the World Health Organization Foundation and president of its US affiliate, the World Health Foundation. Her other board memberships include Worldwide US Exim Bank Advisory Council on Advancing Women, Merchants of Peace Fund, and the UNECA Center for Digital Excellence. She was named Business Insider Africa's Female Leader of the Year in 2022. New African and Jeune Afrique magazines consistently include her in on their list of most influential Africans. Forbes Africa also featured her as one of Africa's 50 most powerful women. Rebecca is also World Economic Forum Global Leader for Tomorrow. And in 2022, she was elected as an International Fellow of the esteemed UK Royal Academy of Engineering, earning her the Frang designation. More recently, I found out that Rebecca also joined the Health Cap Investment Committee. And so, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, or ladies, it's a mouthful. Rebecca, I would like to welcome you to the podium to give us an opening speech to motivate us, get us warmed up, and get ready to get into a deep dive with me.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that intro, Janet. And yeah, I was also excited meeting you. You're also my hero. Women in tech, an AI expert, and incredibly ambitious, and a woman of courage. And really, that's really what I wanted to talk about today was courage. And the fact that we need courage, especially as Africans. You know, it's so funny. Over the last few days on Cameroon Twitter, we've had this issue on there is a student that supposedly misspoke towards a teacher online, and I said supposedly because we don't even know if it's her professor or whatever. And it's amazing, like the reactions and the fear that people had because you're not supposed to speak out to authority. And I think that especially as women, it's considered rude to stand up to authority. And it's not just authority. I think that when we talk about courage, we're also talking about courage against our own internal fears. You know, those things that we're most afraid of, failure. It's like we're scared to try something new and then fail. And I posted something on Twitter last night, and really what I meant to say was, you'll never have more courage than right now. You're never going to find courage anywhere more than what you have in you today. And the older we get, the more experienced we get, the less courageous we are. We start to fear things like, oh, I might, I'm that fear of failure, or what will my family say? What will my friends say? What will government authorities say? I already have, I might lose my job. And so there's so many things that we start thinking about and that we start being afraid of that prevent us from having that courage. And so I just want to remind everybody that you have that courage in you. There's nothing to fear. As one American president put it so well, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. So what exactly is holding you back from jumping, from making that jump, from making that statement, from standing up for yourself? So what is holding you back? It's got to be fear. What are you fearing? There is nothing to be afraid of. Of course, you could fail. But if you don't try, you will have no possibility of succeeding. And if you don't exercise your freedom to speak out when you see something that's an injustice against yourself, against others, then you'll always regret. You'll always feel like, what if I had? Shouldn't I have? And so I think there's nothing to be afraid of. Really, I want you all right now to think about the dreams that you have. They're not too big. They're not too big. Janet, who did the intro, she's raising 100 million US dollars. She's raising 100 million US dollars for her startup. That is ambitious. That is her dream. And she's going to achieve it. And then everybody was like, oh my goodness. So women in tech in Africa can raise $100 million. And so I think that is, so don't reduce your dream to what you see around you. Don't believe what, all the naysayers, because everybody will want to protect you from you be achieving your own dreams. And protect you is what they think that they're doing, but they're actually preventing you from achieving your own goals and being the best that you can possibly be. And so, yes, courage, it's not an easy thing because there's so many things, especially in our own context, in our society, as African women, as young people, not my case, but so many young people are so afraid of, because we have this cultural thing where anybody that's older than us, we can't speak out against. Anybody that's in any position of authority, we can't speak up against. And sometimes, no matter what they do, we are afraid to say anything, and so we don't question certain things. There are so many instances where we know something is not right, like the procedures to start a company. Some of them make absolutely no sense whatsoever, but we don't want to challenge them. Right? So we don't challenge the rules. And I'm not saying don't follow the rule. And I'm not saying that when you're challenging authority, do so in a way that's rude. I'm saying don't feel that you can't. The best thing to do is to find the best way to achieve your goals. How can you achieve those goals? Whether they're for your community, for your society, for yourself. What are your goals? What do you want to achieve? And what is holding you back? And if it's a person, if it's a system, don't fear challenging it. That's how the best companies on this earth were formed, by disrupting the existing. So question everything. There is nothing that's set in stone. Every single law was drawn up by human beings, right? Just like you. Maybe even younger than you at this point. And so why can you not question a law that's unjust? Why can't you question and try to change that law? Why can't you question the way things are done in, some business manner, and then reinvent it and make it better and find the solution? That's what entrepreneurs are all about, is to really identify problems that we have and then find an innovative solution to that problem and bring it to market. That's what we do as entrepreneurs. And so that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage, because you're like, wait a minute. So I'm not going to get a paycheck anymore because don't have a job. I'm going to have to figure out how to fund this initiative. And so, yes, it does take courage, but you have that in you, and you're never going to have more courage than today. So if you don't do it now, you'll never do it, and you'll always regret it. So it's never too late, but find that courage in you today. Find that ability to overlook and overcome, and don't be afraid. That's exactly what some of our institutions want from us. That's exactly what some people want for us, is for us to be afraid, so that we don't challenge the system, so we don't challenge their businesses, so we don't challenge their laws. And so I for one, feel that I've tried to exercise my sense of courage. But I do know that I had way more courage when I first started out than I do now. And so it only goes down, down, down. So really, I encourage you to be courageous. I'm going to, I think, Janet, we have a question and answer period coming up. Janet is going to ask me a few questions, and then we're going to take questions from you that are out there watching this, either on social media or on the platform, on the StreamYard platform.
Absolutely, that is correct. Thank you so much for that opening inspirational speech, Rebecca. I think I resonate a lot with the struggles that entrepreneurs go through when it comes to facing yourself and facing fears, and how fear sometimes is just false evidence appearing real. And I think I'd like to encourage every woman watching to take a deep breath, because it's going to be a deep dive into some really tough questions and topics. I hope, Rebecca, you're ready.
Born ready.
Born ready. But I think let's start by talking about why you are why you are strong, why you are resilient. You could be soft, you could be nonchalant, you could be on a beach somewhere sipping a martini and eating the delicious seafood you recently posted on Twitter. Not that I was stalking, but hey, just doing part of my job. So I think before I ask any question, I want you to tell us why you do what you do and you're who you are.
Oh gosh, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. So I think part of it is definitely my upbringing, and my parents. I have two very strong-willed parents. My father, who passed away some years ago, but very strong personalities, characters, and I think that they were that example of standing up to authority, of questioning things. And I know that my father suffered a great deal for speaking out and for not being part of the system. So I know he was a lawyer, and he was one of the first, actually was the first Cameroonian lawyer to practice law in Douala, which is the economic capital. Prior to that, only French people, French lawyers had been lawyers in Douala, and they actually didn't want him to practice in Douala because he'd studied in the UK, and was a member of Gray's Inn in the UK, and then continued his studies in the US. And so he had to challenge them. So he actually took these French lawyers to court in 1970, and he won. So he won, and he was then, he won. He sued for one franc at the time, but it was really just to say that there's no reason why me as an African in my own country can't practice law because I didn't pass the Paris bar. So I think that growing up with somebody that was always ready to challenge authority, government, etc., I think that made a huge difference. And then my parents were very focused on education. So I wasn't a spoiled child at all. Like I was, but my mother would buy me boxes of books. Right. So I wouldn't get toys, I wouldn't get clothes, but I would get books. And so having two educated parents to me was an incredible privilege. And I see that despite all of the challenges that they both had, and these were huge challenges, they still held their voice. And they didn't stand down. And I think so I think that's really what helped me is having those two very those parents with a lot of character and who weren't afraid of me challenging them. So
Wow.
some of the conversations that I would have with my father. So it was so funny because I was like that kid that I was like, no, why are you doing that? Like, why would you do that? Like, and my brothers and sister, they would just run. Like they would run and they're like, oh my goodness, she didn't, But I think that my father actually appreciated that because it was a way to have a conversation. And I remember talking to him one day and I was like, I didn't feel like talking to him. So I was avoiding his phone call. This was very long. I was grown. I mean, this is, not that long before, just a few months before he died. And I said, sometimes I don't want to talk to you because we fight, like we keep arguing and I don't like, and he's like, no, but arguing is good. So I realized that for him, sometimes he would push me, using arguments that weren't necessarily his to see what my reasoning is and to push me into critical thinking and to push me to understand how to make an argument. And so I think that those things really helped me a lot. And I miss my dad so much.
Well, I'm sure he's super proud of you. I also lost my dad, and it seems like they were quite similar because I also managed to grow a backbone or to sort of be this. We like to call it a wild goose in my family because my dad was quite similar, wings spread out, and sounds like your dad was also quite the rebel. Imagine suing someone for 1 franc. That's quite a statement.
Yeah, and he kept suing the government. So he kept
Yeah.
suing the government and winning. It was really, it was really something.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's a great way to kickstart the conversation and allow all of us to kind of think about how our upbringing, our early childhood foundations kind of help build that foundational character that we have and affect us no matter what. And we can kind of use that as a superpower to overcome all these false fears that we tend to pick up as we grow. So what's interesting to me is that you have a lot of roles and you also look very relaxed. And those two don't go together. It sounds like an oxymoron, And it's like you're consistently, you know, championing these different roles and entrepreneur-led opportunities. You're enabling people, you're enabling yourself, you're enabling your team, you're finding a way to structure your personal life, your professional life. And at the end of the day, you know, you still have the same 24 hours that we all have. And I'm thinking, what is going on? I think we want to know two things today. What is your beauty secret? And then what is your organizational secret? Because I can only imagine, you know, it took me maybe 10 minutes just to introduce you. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you organize yourself before we kind of segue into the tech aspect of what you do?
Okay, so I try to be highly organized and disciplined. And so you wouldn't think that because I'm always on Twitter, but I'm on Twitter. I could be on Twitter while I'm on this call. I'll actually probably be on Twitter while I'm talking. And so I know how to manage my time. And I very much, and this is something that I've really learned over the last, I would say 15 years, is to focus on my wellness. You talked about beauty secrets, and I would change that and say wellness, because is my health, because of I'm healthy, and because I have a lot of energy, and because I don't get sick, I am able to do a lot more, right? So I do have a lot of energy, and all of that is related to a wellness routine that I have, to ensure that I do stay healthy, and not just healthy, but I optimize my health. And so that I take supplements to support that. I do a little bit of exercise, although I'm not the best exerciser, but guys, exercise is
What are
super
these? Yoga?
super important to your wellness. But I do exercise. I do, and I try to stay very, very active. I turned 56 a couple weeks ago. I guess about 3 weeks ago. And it's rare that I get sick, or it's very rare. I got COVID, you know, as many people did, but I hardly get a cold or the flu or anything like that. And I think it's because I eat well. I stay away from sweets and sugar, and so I really try really hard to promote my own wellness and the wellness of those around me. So I think that's part of it. And then the second part is being really organized and having a great team. And so I have my own personal team of people that work with me and support me, and have been working with me for over 20 years. Yeah. Some of them 24 years, that have been a part of my core support team, and admin team. And so they understand exactly, you know, what information they have to pass on. They manage my scheduling, that kind of thing. And so that core team, and then each of the organizations that I'm involved in has amazing, amazing teams. You know, you talked about Afrilabs. Oh my goodness, you know, that the secretariat of Afrilabs, you know, led by women, is just, they're just amazing. And so I can run my mouth like on a platform like this one or on Twitter, and then they will actually get the work done. And so I keep telling people I'm the chief forwarding officer. So I know exactly who to forward an email to or a message to, so that it gets done. And so that's really what's critical, is really, you know, relying on, you know, the talent that you have around you, and you know, ActivSpaces, which is the tech hub that I co-founded. It's been 12 years now. and no, 13 years, and is led again by a fantastic team that do question me a lot, and they don't make it easy for me at all, but they really get the job done. And so when you have such quality people, the WHO Foundation is the exact same thing. I mean, what amazing human beings are running these organizations, and changing lives daily. And then I get to take credit for part of it. And so I love that.
I love that. I love that. That's amazing. And you've been in the tech industry for most of your career. I think that's the real, anchor. It's the real vertical you're really anchored in. And I'd like you to share a few words about what it was like starting Apps Tech about 24, 25 years ago, if that's correct. And, how do you see that 2-decade shift now kind of changing to the advantage of women? How do you see that playing out today, for women who are starting tech ventures, maybe even AI ventures? How do you see the narrative changing now?
So yeah, when I started 24 years ago, I started in the US first. So I started a company called ActivSpaces, and it stands for Application Technologies. And we don't do apps, but at the time we that's what we called enterprise software. So applications were the types of the enterprise software that runs the back end of a company, the finances, the human resources, the procurement, in the case of telecommunications clients, their network. So those are the things that kind of were my core. I mean, that's what I knew how to do. I had been working as a financial systems analyst or consultant for several years before I started my company. And the original name of the company, and I cannot believe I did not keep the domain names, was FinTech. So we were the FinTech group. Can you imagine? Because we were doing financial technologies. So all of the, the technology around, the how a company runs its finances. So that's how we started, and we changed names. That was in 1999. And then in 2000, we changed our name to ActivSpaces because we didn't want to just do financial applications. We also wanted to do other applications like, HR and procurement and so on and so forth. So I think that what helped me a lot back then is not realizing how hard it was. Right. So that kind of naive, looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, which is, I still do that, by the way. I'm still like a super optimistic person. And I wake up knowing that today will be better than yesterday and tomorrow will be better than today. And so that really keeps me going. But imagine, 24 years ago, I was way more naive about how business works and what it would be like as a Black African woman starting a business in the US, which was white male dominated. So, which was not just white male dominated, it was like white male, period. So it was rare to see a woman. And it was, I never encountered or met any other Black woman in the work that I was doing. And so I didn't really realize how hard it would be. I had no idea. So I went about it as if I was a white male. And I think that was kind of helpful because I prepared my business plan. I wrote everything. I didn't look for outside funding at the very beginning. I looked for customers. And it was pretty quick to understand that customers didn't they didn't look at me as a potential provider of $1 million services, technology services at the time. And so I found a way to hide behind a brand. And I think as geeks, this is something that comes very naturally to us, by the way,
Yeah.
because we don't really want to be up front. We'd rather just be behind the computer and then do the work, and then whoever gets credit for it, we don't care. And I always used to say that technology is a great equalizer, because when you're downloading an app on a phone, you don't care if it's a woman or a man or, you know, a white person or an African that developed it. You just want something that works. And so I think that technology is a great equalizer, but technology business, so technology entrepreneurship, is not equal. And I think that's what I failed to realize at the beginning. And so what I did is that I created a brand. And I think this was like probably what helped me succeed, is I created this brand called AppsTech, built a website at the time. I built it myself, and because I didn't have staff, I had no staff, and so I built it myself, and I made it I put it in French and English, and in English and French, and nobody was doing it at that time. Like nobody had, like, you know, site. Only very, very large companies had sites in multiple languages, and the image that I built through that website, which was so critical at the time because we didn't have, you know, Google wasn't where it is today. And there were so many things that were different back then, that your website was your identity. And so the website looked like a huge company. And so, and then I hid. And so on my business card, I didn't have a title, right? So I didn't want to be CEO, because I just wanted to be like a salesperson, or I was an engineer, or whatever I needed to be to sign the client. And there were so many times that they didn't want to believe that I was behind the company anyway, and it was fine. That was just really fine. And so I think that's, you know, that it was that hiding, is like that building the brand and then putting the brand forward. And then, you know, we started getting contracts, and then people realized that then, like, there's this CV thing, right? Where especially when you're in services, technology services, which we started out as back then, people want to know, you know, who is going to be working on the project and how much each person costs. And then you negotiate the price. And I'm like, this is not working. And then when I would send CVs of my staff, because one of the things is, even though I started in the US, my staff was African. So I hired Africans from, you know, all across the continents, and the best that I could find, but Africans. And so here we were, Africans in a foreign country, trying to compete against companies with 150,000 employees, right? So then, like, so our customers, then we would say, like, oh, can you send the resumes? I would send a resume of Babu Diallo, and they're like, no, this is not. So what we did was we then productized services. So what we did is that we, instead of saying, okay, for this particular service, you know, we need this is the personnel that's going to be working on it, and these are the CVs. We're like, okay, we're going to give you a solution, and you can choose between A, B, C, and each solution costs this much, and we guarantee that it will work, right? And if it doesn't work, then you can charge us. And so we completely turned around the industry. And I can say we completely turned around the industry because nobody was doing this at the time. Subscription, right now we call it software as a service, subscription services. And so we started doing support for very large organizations and very large companies around the world, by having them say, okay, we will make sure that your financial system, your procurement system, your network applications work 99.95% of the time. If there's any downtime, you start charging back on the subscription. And so all they had to do was sign up between, if they wanted 24/7 support, 9 to 5 support, and if they wanted end user support, that kind of thing. And we ended up signing companies across the globe using that model because they didn't care who was working on it. They just knew that they were going to get a result. From Russia to Brazil to Hong Kong to, across Europe. So that's really what helped us grow. And so we opened offices, and we had 7 offices on 3 continents. So in the US, in Europe, and in Africa. And so we were working that model, and other companies started to use that model after that. And I saw a question come up while I was saying this, is one of my failures was one of a larger company, a much larger company that was an ISP, a local ISP, a US-based ISP, was trying to acquire us. This is 2004. And so we had started the discussions first as a partnership, and then them acquiring us as one of their business units, because what they were doing was hosting the platforms for people, like hosting their servers in their data centers, and they wanted to be able to provide that additional layer of support. And so that's what they wanted from us, is so that they could get bigger clients. And I was scared, right? We talk about fear, and maybe I didn't have the courage to go through with it. And I always tell people that don't fear losing your baby, right? Because this company was my baby, and at that time it was just 5 years old. But it was 5 years old. We had generated by then about $35 million in revenue, and so we were really on a growth path over the 5 years. And they got impatient with me, the company, and they got impatient, and they ended up acquiring one of our competitors. And this competitor was newer than us. They had been founded, I think, in 2003. They were called App Shop, not Appstech. They were on the West Coast, and they had 10 times less revenue than we did. And they were acquired for $45 million. So I always say that, that was the biggest mistake that I made, because I would have taken that 45 million, or it would have been more because we were bigger, and done something else with it, created another company or invested in companies. And this is 2004 money. So you can just imagine.
Exponential value at the time.
Yeah. And so when I read in the news, I at the time I was like, nah. And then coming like afterwards up until today, I think that's definitely one of my biggest regrets. But I think that was that's how we started. And that's how we grew, is by productizing services.
I think going back to, fears and the dynamic between the different leadership roles that you take on that span across the continent or even the globe, from Afrilabs, like I mentioned, to the World Health Organization or Foundation, which one of your moments where you face challenges, interpersonal challenges, affected your business in a way that you were ready to throw in the towel and sort of quit? And how did you change that around? What was the experience like that kind of shaped that wanting to throw in the towel, So I think I want to know what the experience was and how you managed to turn it around. Could it have been the afternoon of Tuesday, August 10th, 2021? Could it have been another date? May you please share with our audience?
So August 10th, for those that missed the beginning, 2 years ago was the day that I was arrested in Cameroon for no reason. But no, that was not a bad day. Like for me, it was definitely a day that I will remember, and a day that marks my life in a very important way. But it made me more defiant. It didn't make me more afraid or like, oh, I want to give up. It just actually gave me like, I need to do more. And I need to make sure that others don't suffer what I have suffered, because I was in a very different position from most in that, you know, I have access to my whole Twitter community and I have all these boards and these organizations that I'm involved in, and each of them in their way contributed to getting me released and getting the international media attention that was necessary for me to be released. So no, and I think it was actually one of the positive experiences, because like I felt when I got out and I was able to see all the messages and the love I got on social media, I was so touched. I had no idea, like there were so many people involved, and I feel so grateful. I felt so grateful that I lived to see that love. You know, a lot of people, they might see it like they're dead, you know, and or something more dramatic happens, and so I think that just for that, it was actually something that I look at on, you know, not in a bad way for me personally, but I think it reflects very, very badly on the justice system in my country. But have I ever wanted to give up? No. I think, I don't know, it's maybe in my DNA, you know, there's a DNA trait. So I told you I'm all about wellness, but in our DNA, there's actually a DNA trait that is a resilience trait. And I think a lot of Africans have this trait because we put up with a lot and we still get up and we smile and we dance and we eat our food and enjoy it and enjoy life despite everything. So I don't know that I ever wanted to give up. I had some very difficult moments, hugely difficult moments, and I wouldn't say that my arrest 2 years ago was the most difficult. I think the most difficult was when I almost lost my company, because in 2004, one of the reasons that I was so reluctant to be sold is because I didn't think, so we go through these things. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I was good enough because I was trying to collect money from a company that owed us, and they owed us millions of dollars. And I'm like, okay, as soon as I finish collecting this money, then maybe then all my books will be clean. And I realized now, especially as an investor, they don't care. They don't care. You don't have to be perfect all the time. And so I think that going through that process of having this customer, and of course it had to be in my home country, right? And so, and going through and realizing that people don't respect contracts, they don't respect their words, that they're ready to destroy you. And these are words that were used against me, is they will go out of their way to actually destroy you. Why would anybody do that? Like, why would you get up and say, oh, let me go destroy that company? Like let me just go destroy that business, because who does she think she is? Like making, you know, asking for us to pay a multi-million-dollar bill, even though that's what the contract said they needed to pay. So like, where she, almost like it's shopping money, like it's my personal money, you know, that I go shopping with or something. And I don't deserve that money. It was just crazy. And so that whole legal battle, which is still ongoing today, almost 20 years later, is something that marks me, I think, more than anything, because there were so many assumptions about how business is done on the continent, which is different from the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, that it was so different. So like I realized so many things, and I learned so much about that. That was so disappointing to me because I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to make a mark on the continent through my business. And I think I have, but indirectly. Like, it's not been the way that I imagined that it would be. Like, I really thought that that the investments that I made on the continent, and they were very huge, multi-million-dollar investments in my business, would be like, okay, we can, this proof that you can, tech is a viable industry on the continent. And so I think that those were the shock that they don't really want you to be the tech. They don't really want it to look like you. They don't want you to be behind this was probably the most painful thing. And overcoming that is really, again, seeing the young people that still have that dream, and that optimism. And really, as soon as I saw that community on the ground, that gave me all the courage and that I needed. Like, that gave me all the fuel that I needed to keep going.
Wow. I think what I've picked up from what you've been sharing is being able to find yourself in the right spaces with the right people and getting a community and an ecosystem behind you. You spoke earlier as well about your team, and then your family dynamic. I think that's really part of the secret sauce, and as Africans, I think we have lost it, or we constantly lose it sometimes, because we don't have it, in our DNA to kind of cross collaborate across different countries with people that don't speak the same languages as, or even eat the same food. For goodness sakes, until now, Ghanaians are fighting with Nigerians about jollof rice.
Over rice, guys, over
Over
rice.
Yes. So imagine more coming together and having business deals and sitting at the same table. It's a nightmare. But I think I want to start asking some of the questions from the audience. I think someone said when it comes to business, white men fail, rich fail rich, and then Black women succeed poor. What's your take on that? I'm not quite sure what this question is
I get
asking.
it. I totally get it. Like,
All right.
a white male's failure will
Mm-hmm.
always still be better than a Black woman's success. It's like, so what
Oh, yes.
a white male looks like when he fails,
Mm-hmm.
a Black woman, that that is still above her level of success. And we see this all the time. Women, Black women in America, I'm not talking about in Africa, in America, get 0. The digits in venture capital.
Mm-hmm.
Black women are not getting funded at all. And they actually did a list. There's a list of the women that were funded that have received over $1 million in venture capital. But you have males that can lose 150 million, 200 million, $1 billion, and then the next day they get funded again.
Yeah, you mean like Adam Newman, WeWork?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, there are lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I understood is that we don't have, on n'a pas le droit à l'erreur, as we say in French, is we don't have the right to an error. We're not allowed to make mistakes. So, and I try to tell my entrepreneurs this, because some of them, and I hope that at least one of them is listening to this, they read all these Silicon Valley thingies, right? And they're like, oh, they think that they can get away with what a white male in Silicon Valley gets away with. And I'm like, you cannot. It's not possible. We're not in the same realm. They're waiting for us to fail. And one of the things that annoys me to no end is the fact that when you're an entrepreneur in Africa, especially a woman, you're expected to have a business and prove that you're going to have social impact.
Yeah.
A white male in Silicon Valley all he has to worry about is whether or not he can get customers and whether or not he has a business model that could eventually make lots of money for the investors. Why add this additional criteria, this additional requirement for entrepreneurs on the continent? And those investors that are only looking at that are actually losing out on so much opportunity, because there's an opportunity to make money on the continent. And they're losing out by making us go through all these hoops to prove that we are allowed to have money. Let us fail.
Yes.
Allow us to fail, because out of that failure, we will grow more entrepreneurs. But we cannot, it's very difficult. And I did a blog post on my anonymous blog, which is not so anonymous anymore, but which was Diary of an African Entrepreneur. And this is like, I haven't blogged in 15 years, but at the time, I was talking about the ability to come back from failure, because we all fail. We will all fail. And the entrepreneur is the one that can overcome that failure and keep going. And that is so incredibly hard. That is so hard. Nobody tells you, because like failure teaches you lessons. But you know how you screwed up. But now, how do you find in you the strength to get back up and try again? And I think that is the thing that they don't tell entrepreneurs how to do. Like, it is so hard to come back after, because you're so knocked down. You have no energy, right? You've been beaten up, and you feel like a total failure. And so how do you convince yourself that you're good enough to overcome? And I think that's the hardest thing. And I would tell you that most do not overcome the failure. They stay in failure, right? They stay with, these are the lessons, and then they'll come on the internet and teach you all the lessons of entrepreneurship, right? After they failed, and they're like, they have a job somewhere, right? They have a job and they have a salary, they're making their salaries, and then they'll come and teach you about the lessons of entrepreneurship. And there's a room for that, because we can learn from other people's failures, even though they were not able to overcome them, because I think it's a psychological thing. It's a psychological war against ourselves, right? Like, there's nothing as lonely as being a CEO, and there's nothing as hard as being a CEO. It's incredibly lonely. And, you're always making choices between a bad choice and a horrible one. But people from the outside will be like, oh my God, she made a bad choice. Yeah, I did make a bad choice, but my alternative was even worse. And so, it's really, really hard. And so managing our psychology as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as CEOs, not only as entrepreneurs, because, any leadership position, it's really important to find a way to manage your psychology, to manage your energy, and to keep going, and to find that thing inside of you that will allow you to overcome what will always be a failure. You will always encounter failures, sometimes multiple times in the same day, right? And then successes also in the same day. I think that's the roller coaster of entrepreneurship.
Definitely. And I think a brilliant segue into the next question is, you mentioned that, the journey of an entrepreneur, it gets lonely. You have to make a bad decision or an even worse decision. And in that decision-making process, you have your team, you have yourself, and then you have your maybe board advisors or a mentor. I want to know what your thoughts are on mentorship, and if you had mentors on your journey as an entrepreneur. I can, share that I've had mentors before, some great, some not so great. And there's a fine balance between listening to your own voice and then listening to the voice as well for mentor, but then making the decision to make the decision. So what are your thoughts on that? Did you have a mentor?
I did not have a mentor, because that was another thing that was reserved for, whites, like
Mhm.
in the community. I remember being so hurt
Mhm.
when I asked a woman to be my mentor in 2002, and she was an investor at the time, and she was the only like woman that was high anywhere in tech that I could see and identify, and we met at this big conference, and then she ended up mentoring another person that was also at that conference, that was a male, and I was so hurt.
Mhm.
But I also now understand it's not, you can't mentor everybody, right? And it's work. And so it's, I like working, like for me, I do mentor. I was not formally mentored, right? So I didn't have a relationship of mentor, but I was blessed with other entrepreneurs that were running businesses, um, that weren't in tech necessarily, and I connected with them, and that peer-to-peer mentorship of people that are going through the exact same thing that you're going through, and that ability to share, and are like, nobody else understood, like
Yeah.
payroll, right? The stress of making payroll. Like nobody understands that except for somebody that has stayed up, like had sleepless nights, because how are they going to make payroll? Like you have all these people that are depending on you and counting on you. And so being able to connect with people that are going through that, have gone through it, and support each other has been, for me, that's the peer-to-peer mentorship, has been amazing. And I also like worry about this thing where, like the mentorship thing, like you can support an entrepreneur in many ways. Some entrepreneurs need a coach. What they're looking for in a mentor is a coach, right? To like
Mhm.
guide them and show them, a mentorship is much more informal than that. And so this is not a paid thing. And so like asking somebody to commit time and energy and is not easy, but there's some great mentorship programs out there, that are constructed around bringing women that have time, that have energy, that have experience in their industry, and connecting them with young African entrepreneurs. And I said entrepreneurs, not necessarily tech. And there's so many of these great programs, and I really hope that people will take advantage of them, because none of that was available when I was starting. I don't know how much it would have helped me, because I've never wanted to be tagged as an African woman entrepreneur. I want to
Mhm.
be an entrepreneur. I want to be a successful entrepreneur. And I don't want, like, so I remember back in the US, and I think they still have it, but they have this thing where they have this 8A program, government set aside programs for women and minorities. And everybody was like, oh, you should apply and get government contracts that way. And I don't want to be, I'm like, I don't want that, because I want to get the contract because we are the best, not because I'm Black and I'm a woman, right? And so it's that whole like being pigeonholed as a woman, as a Black woman entrepreneur versus as an entrepreneur, um, that I don't even know how I got to this. I don't think I'm answering
Mhm.
the question anymore.
No, it's okay. I think it's great because we can just consider this a, a kind of round table, fireside chat kind of vibes.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty great. I think another great or valuable insight that I believe the audience would like to have today, that should have probably been my initial question, considering you're well position in this space is the VC space or investment space, or how money is moving on the continent for women, young women, Black women, women in tech, African women. I think we want to know where the opportunities are, how we can better structure our businesses for investment, and how do you believe access to financial resources and financial mentorship, or getting that financial discipline can contribute to women's empowerment and entrepreneurship, and what advice you would give to any aspiring women entrepreneurs or those that are already entrepreneurs on the continent.
Okay, so one thing that I've noticed is that when we talk about funding for women, I don't want to get, okay, so I looked into this very closely. And if you look at the big programs that are international programs on how to fund women entrepreneurs, and these large organizations put tons of money behind investing in women. But when you look at where the money goes, I actually did a spreadsheet and I calculated. Some of these programs, 0% fund women.
Mm-hmm.
So they fund programs to fix women. Because you said it, how do we become more financially? How do we restructure ourselves? How do we, like, they just want to fix us. So we're not good enough. And this is something that we have to stop saying to ourselves. We have to stop saying, how can I be more worthy of your money? I'm already worthy. You haven't figured that out, right? You don't know. You as the investor don't know that I am already worthy. So don't fix me, and don't put me in any other program to fix me, right? So don't put me in any more program to teach me how to do a balance sheet. I know how to do a balance sheet. So I don't think, and it's very frustrating to me that all of these programs that are for women and funding always have this component to teach them how to run a business. Why? Like, why? All entrepreneurs need to have foundational skills on running a business. All entrepreneurs, male and female, they all need those skills. There is no reason why you would take women and tell women that they need to improve their skills. Men need the same skills. So either you have a program to support all entrepreneurs and provide skills for them, or you just give money to women cash. You know, one of the things I say over and over again is that when you talk about microcredit, like this whole microcredit thing, remember, like it was a big deal and it's today. There's never been a microcredit program for men. It's always for women. So for us, the idea is that we deserve $50 loans, not $50 million investments. And I think that we need to psychologically stop trying to fix ourselves and stop thinking that we need to improve in order to be worthy of that money. Many of our businesses are well ahead of those of some of the male counterparts that are getting the funding and that aren't required to improve their business management skills.
Wow. I think I definitely agree with what you're saying, that most of these programs out here for women, have this shiny emblem on the front that come on along, board the ship to success. You're going to get some money, or you're going to get resources, and then you get inside and you're just drowned and pounded with mentorship and courses, and it's this big shiny thing, women impact. It's like, who are we really impacting?
and if organizations want to run those programs, then give the contracts to women-owned organizations. So at least there's some level of trickling down into women-owned businesses.
Definitely. I think that wraps it up in regards to the Q&A virtual fireside chat. I think in terms of the audience as well, I don't know if we have any questions. I can take one last question. I don't see anything in the chats. Let's just give it a minute. Okay. Well, since we don't have any questions, I would like to thank you once again, Rebecca, for taking part, sharing your time. I know you're a very, very busy lady. And yeah, very gracious. Thank you. Always
It's
happy
been a
to
pleasure. Thank you guys, and see you on Twitter. Let's continue the conversation. I have a few meetings, but I can tweet and meet at the same time. So yeah, look forward to talking to you. Africa Techie on Twitter, if you don't know.
Africa Techie on Twitter.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Life is a journey. We are all traveling. Kure kwanda koi, here I have been traveling. Life is a journey.